So last year, a nation that is, really famous worldwide for its terraced hillsides and just this deep agricultural heritage, well, they spent an absolutely mind-boggling 434 billion rupees on one thing.
Right, which is just wild when you actually think about it.
Yeah, food imports. I mean, the hands that historically planted those fields are now, driving trucks in the Middle East or pouring concrete in the Gulf.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the money those workers send back,
Yeah.
it's basically being used to buy the food they're no longer growing.
It's such a heavy realization. But welcome to the Nepali Diaspora Network podcast, everyone. Your source for news, views, and insights for Nepalese worldwide.
So glad you're joining us today.
Yeah, we are doing a deep dive into the latest Nepali Diaspora Digest for the week of July 24 to 31, 2026. And I have to flag it right up front. This is a heavy week.
It really is. A lot of difficult news.
Yeah. We are examining everything from a tragic missile strike in Kuwait, unrest in the eastern Tarai, a massive search and rescue operation in the Karakoram, and, how the state just seems to be struggling to manage it all.
It is the ultimate paradox of a remittance economy, honestly. You send your workforce away to survive, but in doing so, you kind of hollow out your own foundation.
Right.
And when global events shake the countries where those workers are deployed, whether that's, inflation, sudden policy shifts, or outright war, the shockwave hits those empty fields back home with devastating force.
And that shockwave is exactly what we are tracking today, because the vulnerability of that overseas workforce, it just became tragically literal this past week in northern Kuwait.
It did. It's so sad. A 44-year-old driver from Terhathum, Kumar Tamang, was killed when an Iranian ballistic missile struck the Chinese company building where he had been working since 2022.
Oh, man. Just a devastating loss for his family. And he is now the second Nepalese killed in this escalating West Asian conflict, right? Following Diwas Shrestha earlier in the UAE.
Yeah, exactly.
My immediate question, and I'm sure you at home are thinking the same thing when seeing headlines like this, is always about the evacuation plan. Like, when a region becomes an active war zone, why are these workers still in the line of fire?
Well, what's fascinating here and really terrifying is the sheer scale of exposure. There are roughly 186,000 Nepalese workers in Kuwait alone right now.
Wait, 186,000 just in Kuwait?
Yeah, that is about 4% of Kuwait's entire population. And unlike, say, a highly paid corporate executive who can just monitor the news, break a lease, and buy a premium flight out, these workers are trapped by the actual mechanics of their employment.
Right, they operate on tied contracts.
Exactly.
I want to break that down for a second, actually, because the term tied contract gets thrown around a lot in the news. What does that actually mean for the worker on the ground?
It means their legal residency is entirely sponsored by and tied to their specific employer.
So they can't just leave?
No. If they abandon their job to flee a dangerous area without the employer's explicit permission, they instantly become undocumented. They lose their legal status, their housing, and often their withheld wages.
Wow, that's a trap.
It is. Combine that with the massive loans they usually take out against their family's land back in Nepal just to pay the recruitment cities to get to Kuwait in the first place. That debt is a chain.
Right, they have to keep working to pay it off.
Yeah, even under the threat of falling missiles.
Okay, let's unpack this because it feels like a painful boomerang effect. The geopolitical conflict endangers the worker abroad, and then the economic fallout from that exact same conflict hits their family back home at the grocery store.
The mechanics of that are brutally direct, yeah. The U.S. and Israeli military assault on Iran back on February 28, that triggered a massive global fuel shock.
And Nepal is totally exposed to that.
Completely. The country is landlocked and imports all of its petroleum through India via a heavily transport-dependent supply chain. So when the global price of diesel spikes, the cost of moving every single sack of rice or cylinder of gas up into the hills just spikes right along with it.
The wholesale inflation numbers are just completely alarming. It hit 8.47% by mid-June.
Which is a 39-month high, by the way.
Right, and petrol is up to 219 rupees a liter. I mean, how does a family absorb a shock like that when the money coming in from abroad is relatively fixed?
Well, they often can't. And the timing of this data is a massive warning sign. Wholesale prices generally lead retail consumer prices by about 2 to 3 months.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, that means the real squeeze on the consumer, the actual sticker shock at the local market, is going to peak right around Dashane.
So if you are listening to this right now and you are starting to budget for the remittances you plan to send home for the October festivals, that money will fundamentally buy less than it did last year.
Sadly, yes. The cost of living has just shifted beneath their feet. Which brings us right back to that staggering food import paradox you opened with.
The 434 billion rupees.
Yes. Spending that much on food imports makes food the country's second largest external dependency after petroleum. Just for a sense of scale, back in 2009, the entire food import bill was about $44 billion.
So it has grown nearly tenfold. That's insane.
It really is. The closed loop of the remittance economy leaves the country incredibly exposed to external policies. Take India's current sugar export ban, for example.
Right, I read about that.
It is already driving up cross-border smuggling ahead of the festivals simply because the domestic supply cannot meet the demand.
And, the external pressures are compounding everywhere. It's not just economic, it's administrative, too. Saudi Arabia just completely froze work visas for Nepalese workers in 5 major job categories.
Yeah, including construction and portering.
What triggered a blanket freeze like that from a country that relies so heavily on this labor?
This is a perfect example of how administrative friction ruins lives. So, Saudi Arabia requires a specific skill test for these visas. The official Saudi fee for this test is $50, which translates to about 7,500 rupees.
Okay, that seems standard.
But the testing center operating in Kathmandu was functioning as a private monopoly, lacking proper legal authority, and they were illegally charging workers 10,000 rupees.
Oh, wow. So they were price gouging.
Exactly. And if a worker failed, they were forced to pay that inflated fee all over again.
So the state steps in, seals the testing center to stop the gouging, but, let me guess, there is no backup infrastructure in place.
None. So the entire visa pipeline collapses.
Yeah.
You have thousands of Nepalese workers who have already taken out those crushing loans we talked about. Their bags are packed, and now they are stuck at home with no way to travel.
It's heartbreaking. And the door to Australia is getting much heavier to push open, too. I saw they rejected a record 64% of offshore student visa applications from Nepal in early 2026.
Yeah, and Nepal was moved into the highest risk assessment band.
For someone applying, what does that classification actually trigger in the immigration system?
It fundamentally changes the burden of proof. When a country is placed in a higher risk band, immigration authorities operate under the assumption that the applicant is at a high risk of violating their visa terms.
Like overstaying or working too many hours?
Exactly. So applicants have to provide significantly more financial documentation and face much harsher scrutiny. But the most painful part is the financial toll. The application fee is 2,500 Australian dollars, and it is entirely non-refundable.
So a 64% rejection rate means an enormous amount of wealth is just being drained from Nepalese families for absolutely nothing in return.
Yes, millions are just lost. But on the administrative front, there is at least a slight operational upgrade back home. The Passport Department is moving to a 2-shift system to try and clear the massive delivery backlogs.
Oh, that is a relief. Anyone in the diaspora who has ever waited for a passport renewal at an embassy knows how terrifying that delay can be. A lapsed passport abroad threatens your visa, your job, your bank account, everything.
Absolutely. And, the desperation to move money efficiently, despite all these bureaucratic hurdles, it was highlighted by another major news item this week. The Central Investigation Bureau busted a 49-year-old man running a massive illegal Hundi remittance network.
Right. I want to pause on the Hundi system for a second. We hear that term constantly in the context of diaspora finances, but I feel like the actual mechanics of it are rarely explained. How does a Hundi network bypass the formal banking system entirely?
Well, think of it as a ledger system between trusted brokers across borders. Say you are a worker in Qatar wanting to send money to your village in Nepal. You hand cash to a local Hundi broker in Doha.
Okay.
That broker does not wire the money to Nepal. Instead, they just message their counterpart in Kathmandu.
Mm-hmm.
The Kathmandu broker then takes money from their own local reserves and pays your family.
Wait, so the money never actually crosses the border?
Right. The actual cash never crossed a border. Later, those two brokers settle their ledger through trade invoicing or sometimes smuggling.
So it's incredibly fast, there are no bank fees, and it reaches rural areas where banks might not even have branches.
Precisely why it remains so heavily used. But because it operates entirely outside the formal economy, it drains foreign currency reserves from the state and obviously is highly illegal.
Yeah. We see workers trapped by these complex systems abroad, but the administrative paralysis happening domestically is almost more concerning. The state isn't just struggling to regulate overseas testing centers or remittance flows, it seems to be struggling to show up in its own streets.
Which brings us to the deeply troubling communal violence in the eastern Tarai.
Yeah, the unrest started on Sunday, July 26th, in Kaptanganj, in the Sunsari district. I need some context on the initial flashpoint, though. The reports mention Bulbam devotees playing loud music past a mosque. What exactly is the cultural dynamic there?
Well, Bulbam is a significant Hindu pilgrimage, particularly prominent during the holy month of Shravan. Devotees often walk long distances barefoot to offer holy water to Lord Shiva. These processions are large, they're passionate, and often accompanied by very loud music and chanting. On this particular Sunday, a procession passed by a mosque in an area where there was already lingering tension over a dispute regarding a community flag placed on an electricity pole.
Literally a spark in a powder keg. And the escalation was horrifyingly rapid. The clashes spread across 4 districts: Sunsari, Tarai, Siraha, and Danusha. Police ultimately used live rounds. 3 people were killed: Om Prakash Mehta, 20-year-old Jaya Prakash Mehta, and a 17-year-old boy named Ganesh Yadav, who was shot in Siraha's Gulbazar.
Yeah, and curfews were imposed to break the violence. The government eventually signed a 7-point relief agreement with the victims' families, promising martyr status, 1 million rupees per family, and a formal investigation.
Here's where it gets really interesting, or rather, really concerning. The tragedy itself is terrible, but the mechanics of the state's response are what leave me completely baffled.
Yeah, so.
Well, the real story isn't just the clash, it's the empty chairs, right? As this violence was spiraling across multiple districts, both the Sunsari district police chief and the Koshi province police chief were reportedly on leave. And it took 4 full days for the PM and the Home Minister to arrive on the scene.
Yeah, that is a huge delay.
Is this a failure of local policing or a fundamental failure of the state to show up when it matters most?
I agree. It points strongly to a systemic paralysis. And that exact same sluggishness is playing out in Parliament, too.
Really?
Yeah. Opposition parties demanded resignations over the Tarai response. But when the House actually reconvened to do the work of governing, they returned to a remarkably empty desk. There were only 8 bills pending in the lower house committees and 0 in the upper house.
Wait, 0? What was the target?
The government's own stated legislative target for the year was 166 bills.
You have a country running on remittances, facing soaring inflation, navigating geopolitical blowback, and the legislature has almost nothing queued up to vote on.
The bureaucratic inertia is just visible everywhere. Look at the upcoming Nepal-India boundary talks, scheduled for mid-August in Lucknow.
What's happening with those?
They are moving forward with technical GPS reviews, but they are explicitly excluding the highly disputed Kalapani and Susta regions. The difficult structural conversations are just being pushed down the road.
Always kicking the can.
Exactly. They finally confirmed a new chief election commissioner, Man Bahadur Karki. And in a timeline that almost defies belief, a senior foreign ministry official was just charged with misusing travel documents in a case that dates back 17 years.
It takes 17 years for a corruption charge to land. When the state operates at that kind of glacial pace, the friction inevitably falls onto frontline workers trying to hold these broken systems together.
Absolutely.
Which leads us directly to the crisis in the healthcare sector. On July 25, a 45-year-old heart patient died in the emergency ward of Narayani Hospital in Burgunj. Distraught relatives stormed the hospital and assaulted the attending physician, Dr. Pramod Ram.
And the medical community's response was unprecedented. The Nepal Medical Association launched a massive 2-day nationwide strike. They completely shut down all outpatient care across government, private, and community hospitals.
Hundreds of thousands of patients across the country were just turned away.
Yeah. The strike only ended after the government formally agreed to prosecute the attackers under a specific 2009 health worker security law.
You just see 2 desperate sides colliding in a broken system here. You have a grieving family lashing out and overworked doctors who are constantly exposed to violence in these horribly understaffed corridors.
And for the listener tuning in from abroad, this is a critical reality check. This is the very healthcare system you rely on when you fly home for a family emergency, or the system you are trying to navigate remotely to manage care for your elderly parents.
That's such a good point.
The severe staffing shortage causing these hospital bottlenecks is directly tied to the global migration we've been discussing. So many Nepalese doctors and nurses have left. They are now staffing the hospitals in the UK, Australia, the US, and the Gulf, the very countries where you, the listener, probably live now.
We are talking about frontline workers dealing with immense risks and, well, that takes us to an entirely different kind of frontline, one located at 8,000 meters.
Yes.
I want to set a very clear, respectful tone for this next segment. We are looking at the Karakoram range in Pakistan, specifically Broad Peak.
On the morning of Thursday, July 30, A massive avalanche swept through a 10-member international climbing team that was navigating the route between camps 2 and 3.
It's just terrifying. As of the latest updates, 3 bodies have been recovered from the mountain. They include a Nepalese climber, Purbahadur Yuktagurung, and Nadhira Alharthi, who was the first Omani woman to summit Everest.
Drone footage has located 6 more climbers on the mountain, though their condition remains unknown.
Right. And we need to state very clearly regarding the ongoing search, Nirmal Nimsdai Purja remains unaccounted for.
Yes, this is an active search and rescue operation. His GPS tracker registered a rapid 800-meter descent during the avalanche, but it continued to show movement until Friday morning.
4 other Sherpa climbers are also missing, right?
Yes, the community is holding its breath, and nobody is willing to close the door on hope while this search is active.
For those wondering why this team is in Pakistan in July, could you explain the climbing seasons? Because we usually hear about this in the spring.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are accustomed to hearing about Everest and the Himalayas in the spring. But July and August are the prime climbing seasons in the Karakoram range in Pakistan. And the backbone of these massive commercial expeditions are Nepalese workers.
Right.
These are Nepalese men working abroad, doing undeniably the most dangerous job in the world.
And Nirmal Purja, he completely changed the narrative around that workforce, didn't he? I mean, for decades, Nepalese climbers were treated by the international media as just background support staff.
Exactly.
Purja helped elevate these climbers, forcing the world to see them as the global protagonists they actually are. For the global diaspora, especially in the UK, he is a figure of enormous pride, making this agonizing weight felt in households across the world right now.
It is a stark, sobering reminder of the risks Nepalese workers take globally to build their livelihoods, whether they are navigating tide contracts in Kuwait or fixing ropes at 8,000 meters in Pakistan.
Before we move off travel, on a briefly related note regarding the dangers of travel, the Nepalese cabinet just raised the compensation ceiling for domestic airline accident victims to $100,000.
Which is a serious policy adjustment for a country where taking a domestic flight is a routine part of almost every trip home for the diaspora.
Yeah, it really is. Well, this has undeniably been a heavy week of news. But, one of the most defining characteristics of the Nepalese diaspora is its sheer capacity for resilience. Even amid tragedy and systemic gridlock, the community finds ways to push forward and celebrate its identity.
We absolutely have to highlight the breakthroughs.
Yes. In Virginia, Deepika Sharma of Maryland was just crowned Miss Nepal North America 2026. It was a massive, vibrant community celebration.
And we're seeing fascinating triumphs in business and technology as well. The restaurant chain Jimbu Thangkali just opened its very first outlet outside of Nepal, launching in India.
Why is a restaurant opening across the border such a significant marker, though?
Because it represents a shift in the economic narrative. We spend so much time talking about Nepalese laborers traveling to find jobs. But this is a Nepalese brand exporting itself, capturing value, and expanding its footprint internationally.
I really love that framing. We also saw some brilliant recognition in journalism and tech. Anup Ojha, an AFP correspondent, won a major Asian Development Bank Journalism Award.
Yes, his piece focused on AI-powered landslide warning systems being deployed in Nepal.
Right. It is advanced predictive technology aimed at protecting the exact same vulnerable hill villages that diaspora families worry about every single monsoon season.
It's just brilliant, using cutting-edge technology to address the country's oldest, most persistent threats. On the sports front, however, the breakthroughs were a little harder to find.
Oh man, for the cricket fans listening, I completely feel your pain. Nepal finished the Tri-Series in the Netherlands without a single win.
Ouch.
Yeah, that included a truly agonizing 3-run loss to Namibia.
It was a brutal tour, but, cricket remains the great unifier. You still had fans in time zones all over the world staying up until 3 a.m. just to watch those matches. The shared investment in the team really binds the community together.
It really does. But the cultural update that genuinely made me smile this week involves a return to the stage. Madan Krishna Shrestha has returned to the Paleti concert series in Kathmandu after an 18-year absence, performing an intimate set alongside his son Yaman.
Oh, the cultural weight of the Mahajodi cannot be overstated. They define Nepalese popular culture, comedy, and social commentary for decades.
Absolutely. So what does this all mean? For anyone listening who grew up in a tiny flat far from home, listening to those Mahajodi comedy cassettes, just hearing his name brings an absolute flood of nostalgia.
Oh, for sure.
To see him back on that stage is a beautiful reminder of the cultural roots that keep this diaspora grounded no matter how far global events push them across the map.
It's the tether that connects the 186,000 workers in Kuwait, the students navigating visas in Australia, and the families scattered across North America and Europe, all back to a shared identity.
Definitely. And speaking of connection, if you are looking to strengthen that sense of local community wherever you are currently settled, particularly in Britain, I want to give a quick mention to our sponsor, Belayat.uk.
It's a great platform.
It really is. If you are settling in the UK or helping a friend who is, Belayat.uk is the Nepalese community's go-to notice board. It is where you can find listings for jobs, housing, local events, and Nepalese-owned businesses. It's an incredibly helpful resource for staying connected locally, so please do check it out.
And to get the full picture of everything we have unpacked today, we highly encourage you to visit nepalidiaspora.net. You can read the full digest, get the latest breaking updates, especially regarding the ongoing search and rescue on Broad Peak, and connect with resources for the diaspora.
Before we sign off today, what is the one thought you want the listener to walk away with this week?
Well, we spent a lot of time today exploring the paradox of the remittance economy, how the diaspora is single-handedly financing the nation's food and fuel from abroad while navigating immense personal risk.
Right.
Simultaneously, we looked at a government struggling to pass basic bills or maintain civic order. So I want you to ask yourself this. How fundamentally will Nepal's political landscape shift when those 186,000 workers in Kuwait and the hundreds of thousands working elsewhere finally secure the overseas voting rights that Parliament is currently debating? When the people funding the country finally get a say in how it is run, what actually changes?
That is a profound question, and one that could literally rewrite the future of the country. We will undoubtedly be watching that debate closely. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive for the Nepali Diaspora Network podcast. Hold your people close this week, stay connected, stay informed, and we will catch you next time.